A little confession here. I actually didn't watch this series in complete chronological order, mostly because as I watched the show, I would occasionally lose track of which episode I have seen and which I did not. But I didn't care too much simply because for the most part, these are standalone episodes. They even have elements that is common in your typical buddy cop show. It even comes with your usual chief that always gets annoyed with our main leads after creating a mess that he now has to clean up. By the way, this character's name is Chief Andrew Francis Gooley, or simply Chief Gooley, and he's probably the most reoccurring character throughout the show. But back on topic, I realized that watching the show in random order was probably a mistake, because there are some subtle overarching elements that evolved over the course of the series. One such element was the relationship between our two main heroines. The first episode established the basis for these characters, but had plenty of room for improvement. I got more of a college roommate vibe between these two than I did of them being real friends. But now I realize that this was probably done on purpose so that we can see them evolve over time. And even though it was subtle at first, I realize the change we see in both Kay and Yuri are undeniable. In early episodes of Dirty Pair, everything these girls do is routine and even somewhat soulless. But by the end of the series, they had become more trustworthy and reliant of each other. For instance, Kay at first tends to do a lot of things on her own, being overly confident in her own abilities and not fully understanding of the dangers she puts herself in. This results in Yuri having to save her every so often, and this forces Kay to be reliant on someone else. After the fact, Kay ends up being more and more appreciative of Yuri as her trust in her increases over the course of the series, because of Yuri's unwavering ability to be there for Kay at all times. By the way, this snapshot you're looking at right now is from episode 25. This is just one dynamic between these two. It really is a story about two girls that go from essentially buddy cops to actual buddies. The sad thing, however, is how few times this series explores these aspects. In fact, I can only think of 7 episodes that I thought were amazing. Dirty Pair isn't consistently good, but that is a given since it's almost impossible for all 26 episodes of a series to rank very high, considering that the amount of writers that were involved. Even the best shows out there have their fair share of duds. That being said, it's actually amazing to think that out of 26 episodes, I only ever hated 1. Some of the weakest episodes are still highly entertaining. It still would be enough for me to like the series, but it is these 7 episodes that ranks the show from entertaining to outstanding. And I only have time to talk about 2 of them. After a long internal debate on which of my favorites I should talk about, I decided to focus on episode 8 and the finale, episode 26. In this part, I will be covering episode 8. So it starts off like any other, with Kay and Yuri messing around in their apartment when they receive a message from a guy called Billy. This for some reason causes a great surprise in Yuri and even motivates her to approach the chief to announce her resignation. This of course shocks Kay, and after acquiring why Yuri wants to quit, it turns out that Billy wants to fulfill a promise he made to her years back. That after he was done building a spaceship called Lucia, he would then take Yuri away with him to live happily ever after. Obviously, Kay doesn't approve, but Gooley, not surprisingly, is alright with this, since this would disband the Dirty Pair, lovely angels, thus giving Gooley less to worry about. There's just one problem. Yuri and Billy were 7 years old when this promise was made, which immediately crushes Gooley's false hopes. So clearly, this wishy-washy promise blinds Yuri to the hastiness of her decision, and although Gooley doesn't think this will go anywhere, dismissing it as just a phase of a young naive girl, Kay, however, takes the situation more seriously and strongly suggests against her decision. But the thing is, to Yuri, it is probably the most touching thing that anyone has ever done for her, which causes her to not change her mind. I find it interesting just how blindly Yuri dives into this situation. She hasn't even spoken to Billy for well over a decade. Yuri has no idea what he's been up to recently, or how much he has changed, and Kay persists in trying to reason with her by bringing up all of these concerns. This goes on for quite some time, but to no avail. At this point, I knew that Kay was concerned for obvious reasons, but perhaps it's even more than that. Even though over the course of the series, the two do bicker a lot about trivial things, this, however, is different.
じゃあうちらのコンビは新しい相棒を探せばいいのよ。私より優秀なのはいっぱいいるわ。そりゃいるでしょうよ。死ぬほどいるよ。吐いて捨てるほどね。だからどうだっつの。
Although this does seem to bother Yuri a bit, how Kay reverts Yuri's insensitive comment back to her, she still optimistically readies herself for departure. However, instead of just letting Yuri go, Kay does a background search and even goes as far as to find where Billy lives. And even though it turns out that Billy is a well-respected engineer, unfortunately he happens to be one of many young and bright engineers that were kidnapped by a terrorist group and are imprisoned on another planet, and that it turns out that Billy's message was actually a cry for help. Unfortunately, there is nothing that the 3WA can do about the situation unless someone hires them and finances a rescue mission. But what do you know? At that exact same moment, Chief Ghoulie receives a phone call from an individual that wants to hire them to rescue those very same engineers. With a promised payment of 1 million credits plus a down payment of 100,000, the chief then agrees to launch a rescue mission. Rather odd how perfect that timing was, but it ain't no coincidence. Kay was the one that made the phone call. And at this point, I started to scratch my head. Why would Kay do this? Depositing what I assumed to be a large amount of money, all in an effort to launch a rescue mission that would reunite Yuri with Billy, is the very last thing that Kay wanted, right? Maybe it's a parting gift or something, I wasn't sure at the time. Anywho, so the duo head over to the planet and stealthily infiltrate the prison where Billy is supposedly located. A little thing I want to point out is that you can really tell that they've done this before on many occasions, just by how calm, professional, and even casual they were.
ほんじゃいい？私が弾薬庫に爆弾仕掛けるから、ユリは工場の様子を。なの？やっとビリーに会えるわ。んなことやってる場合か。
They slowly make contact with several other engineers, but no sign of Billy. Regardless, time is running out and Kay and Yuri set up detonators throughout the complex in order to cripple the forces that hopefully will give them a big enough window to evacuate the prisoners. As the bombs go off, Yuri, whilst attempting to evacuate everyone, constantly searches for Billy, but still cannot find him anywhere. Kay, sticking to the plan, ends up doing most of the work whilst Yuri continues her search. Fortunately, even without the help of Yuri, Kay still manages to get almost all of the prisoners on the hijacked ship. Now, even though Kay told Yuri earlier that if she lingers too long, she will be forced to leave her behind. But Kay isn't like that. She decides to head out to look for Yuri, but even if she found her, obviously she won't leave unless Billy is on that ship. So Kay inquires the others of Billy's location, but unfortunately one of the others inform her of some very bad news. Meanwhile, Yuri, still frantically running around the base, spots someone that could possibly be Billy, but isn't. But because he is injured, Yuri finally puts her search on hold to help this complete stranger. But the search for Billy may be all for naught, now that Kay has learned a horrible truth.
ビリー・ギャレット。あんたがビリーなの。死んでからもこうしてここからユリに信号を送り続けてきたのね。
人殺しの機械を作るなんてもう僕にはできない。もうすぐ僕は殺されるだろう。ユリとの約束守れなくてごめんね。
Try and put yourself in Kay's shoes. How will you tell Yuri? Should you give her the truth or lie? The first time I watched this episode, I was racking my brain on how Kay could get out of this one. You see, Yuri has been so hell-bent on finding Billy, I honestly couldn't see a way out of this without someone getting hurt. Judging by Yuri's desperate actions, I don't know if she could handle the loss, at least in her current emotional state. Yeah, you could wait to tell her the truth when the time was right, but the thing is, Yuri won't leave without Billy, and just telling her a lie just isn't gonna fix much either. Should Kay tell her that Billy used her so that the others could be rescued? Trying to make Yuri resent Billy would soften the blow, but the thing is, that would be disrespectful to Billy. To this day, he still had that locket, which means that he most likely was planning on fulfilling his end of the bargain, but because of circumstances he couldn't. Almost with his dying breath, he managed to find a way to help save the others. I honestly had no idea what Kay was going to do. At this point, the battlefield is getting a little heated, and now we know that they are literally wasting their time. Kay now only has one goal: get Yuri away from this place.
ユリ、ビリーが宇宙船で待ってるよ。ここは私に任せて、早く宇宙船へ。でもあと2分で船は出る。この人連れて行くのはユリの役目だろ。それ、ほら早く、ほっとくと落ちるよ。分かった。
By telling Yuri that Billy is on the ship and by strapping her own jetpack onto the injured prisoner, Kay is successful in getting everyone to safety, well, all except herself. Her chances of getting back to the ship are very slim now, especially considering that it will launch in just a few seconds. At this point, I honestly expected Yuri to rush into the ship, but she doesn't. Yuri slowly comes to her senses when she finally starts to worry about Kay. And so, she returns to help fight by her side, even as the ship leaves them both behind. Yuri may have been a little absent-minded as far as everything else is concerned, but after all that is said and done, in the end, Yuri will never abandon Kay even for her long-lost boyfriend. Even though Kay is a bit upset that Yuri came back for her, her chances of survival are immensely increased. But that means Yuri still doesn't know that Billy is gone. I still didn't know how Kay will break the news to her, but fortunately, she knows Yuri better than I do.
ユリ、私ビリーと話したわ。ちょっとだけ。そう。本物のルーシアはまだまだ先になりそうだってさ。そう。でもやっぱり会わないでよかったみたい。ビリーには思い出の中で会えるもの。それと今でもユリのこと好きだってさ。でしょうね。
Whether I agree or disagree with her decision to not reveal to Yuri that Billy is dead, I do have to say, somehow, she still managed to let Yuri know that Billy still loved her without motivating her to continue to pursue him. Maybe sometime in the future she will tell her the truth, we'll never know. However, there are some things she can't cover up, like how there is no 1 million credits, and that it was actually Kay herself that deposited the 100,000 credits. And that, get this, that money came from Kay and Yuri's joint account. Kay, you goofball! Obviously this irritates Yuri, but no time to argue. Reinforcements have come, and it is now up to our duo to take them down. And that is episode 8. So the looming question, why did Kay do this? Why, after all of the disagreements that she had with Yuri, leaving her for Billy, does she try to do the opposite by reuniting her with Billy? Why did Kay finance the rescue mission, and why didn't she tell Yuri about the true fate of Billy? I think it is obvious, actually. All that Kay ever wanted for Yuri was for her to be happy. I realize now that I have misjudged Kay. I saw her as an insensitive and aggressive tomboy, but after watching this, as well as several other episodes, I realized that although she has a hard exterior, on the inside, Kay is a real softie. In fact, in hindsight, I think Kay is actually more sensitive than Yuri is in some situations. Even though Kay really enjoys extreme things like watching wrestling on TV, there was even one time when she was alone in her bedroom wearing her jammies whilst enjoying some soap operas. I love it when writers do this sort of thing. We think we've figured her out until one day we get some surprises that amazingly doesn't contradict the initial preconception that I had for this character. Sure, these instances are rare throughout the series, but this episode I think was a pinnacle point. It was also refreshing to see our main characters wearing something that is better suited for the kind of work that they are involved in, but also this episode focused on just our two main characters. There was no central villain here, no side character, nothing, rather just Yuri and Kay against their own emotions. When I watched this series for the first time, I accidentally skipped over this episode. And when I went back to rewatch this show, I rediscovered it, effectively making it the last episode that I have seen. And out of all of the possible episodes that I could have ended the series on, I am glad that it was this one.